Yeah, hello everyone, and hello on behalf and a very warm welcome on behalf of taz Panter Foundation. As you know, this talk will be in English, so I hope that everyone can understand me. So, first of all, a warm welcome and good evening to our audience in many countries. We have guests or we have listeners, spectators from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, from Latin America, and of course from Iraq, because we will talk this evening about our workshop, which is called Her Turn, supporting female journalists in Iraq. So first of all, I would like to say a good evening to our partners of the project. The partners are NGOs who are working for a long time in Iraq with, for example, El Barlaman, Haukari, and Al-Sharq. And of course, Nui Danji Radio from Halabja. We will talk about it later a bit. Then I would like to greet guests from the German Federal Office, from the embassy in Baghdad, and perhaps from the consulate in Erbil, from the German consulate, and of course, many donors of taz Panter foundations. And the most important persons today, besides my colleague Sven, and my name is Petra, we are guiding and leading the workshop. But today we have 4 panelists from Iraq. You can see Hiba, Rangin, Khulud, and Mana will join us soon. And I would like then to greet our team in Baghdad. Again, this is Khulud, who will be presented soon. And our translators, interpreters, Jamil and Harem from Baghdad as well. In Berlin, there is our team. As I said, it's Sven and me. Natalie, our finance officer, Catherine, our English editor, Rami, the technical support, and Peter, who made the start. And of course, the head of taz Panter Foundation, which is Conny Gallenberg, quite well known in Germany. So I wish you all and I wish us a very interesting evening. And now I hand over to my colleague Sven.
Warm welcome from my side as well. I hope you will enjoy the evening with us, where we will give you a few insights in our project, which is called Her Turn, Supporting Female Journalists in Iraq, as Petra already said. But of course, that's the main goal or aim of this evening. We would like to give you the chance to talk to 4 female journalists, very respected journalists from Iraq. So somehow they are the star guests, the VIPs of this evening, and they will give you insights of how it is to work as a female journalist in Iraq. So a warm welcome from my side to Khulud Al-Amiri, who is sitting in Baghdad right now. Khulud is the editor of our project, but besides of that, she's of course, first of all, a well-known journalist in Iraq, and she's also the editor-in-chief of an online magazine called Al-Menassa. So warm welcome, Khulud, to our session tonight. The second guest I would like to introduce is Rangin Salam. Rangin is based in Halabja, which is in Kurdistan, close to the Iranian border. And Rangin is working for a radio station called NVE Dange. And then we have Hiba Chaber. She's sitting at the moment in Karbala, which is in the heart or central Iraq. And besides of joining our project from the beginning, Hiba is working mainly for a TV station called Al Gadir. And last but not least, I would like to welcome Mana Abdul Amir from Diwania, a city located 200 kilometers south of Baghdad. Mana is running her own online magazine called Mana News. But before we get to know more about the work and, let's say, the living conditions of the four ladies I just introduced, I would like to give or to hand over to Petra, who will tell you a bit more what we have done so far in our project, which started in September last year.
Yeah, hello again. Yeah, our project, to be honest, it started already in 1 year earlier, in September 2019, when I was visiting Iraq, and especially in Halabja, and there the radio station of Rangin. It is a radio station where refugees work for refugees. They make a program, and we visited and talked to the journalists there. And I thought, well, this is a great job, what they are doing. And so, and they might need some support. So, and we wanted to invite journalists from Iraqi Kurdistan only, but then Corona came, and Corona meant we had to do everything in a digital way. So, but that was an opportunity. It was a chance for us because we were able to spread a call for application in the whole Iraq. So after this call for application, we were able to invite 18 female journalists, and only female journalists. Also, we had some applications from men who had some difficulties, we thought, to read. The group is now representing all regions of Iraq, starting from the north, Dohuk, then down Suleimania, Erbil, Kirkuk, and then to Baghdad, further down to Diyala, Divania, and Kerbala and Basra as well. So, and the participants, they represent all sections of journalism. That means print, TV, online, and radio. We work on political topics such as corruption, corona, election reporting, migration, economic crisis. These are topics usually reserved for male journalists in Iraq. But we think that it is the right for female to work on these and to report on these issues as well. The structure of the topics is always the same. In the first session, we have an input from experts from Iraq and Germany or Europe, from the civil society. Then in the next session, we discuss the journalistic approach and look for some stories. And in the third session, we talk and discuss the journalistic products which have been done in the meantime. So far, for those who are interested to see what we are doing and to see the first results, you can find them in Germany on the website of taz Panter Foundation. In Iraq, you can find them on the website Al-Munassa from Khulud Al-Amiri. So the question is, how do we communicate, and how have we been able to form a more or less quite stable group of 16 so far now? Well, we meet every fortnight on a video conference, which is simultaneously translated by our nice colleagues Jamil and Harem from English to Arabic and Kurdish. So we communicate in 3 languages. Sometimes it is not so easy, but we manage it. In the meantime, between the video conferences or meetings, the group is working on a Telegram group, and really quite busy, I must say. Sometimes I get 30, 40 messages per day. Of course, because I and Sven, we do not speak Arabic, neither Kurdish. We use Google Translator, which is possible from Arabic to English. It is quite funny sometimes, what Google offers to us. Then what is very important, again, Khulud, she's really, I think the most important person of our project, because the participants can reach her nearly day and night, nearly 24 hours on the phone, by mail, and she started to meet some participants personally. So there was a meeting in Baghdad. There might be a meeting in Suleimania for the Kurdish participants during the next weeks. So these are the ways how we do. And just to summarize, the goal and the idea of our workshop is to upgrade the personal knowledge and to have an exchange, and to do networking within and across borders. For this project, of course, we have some support from outside. We get a lot of financial support from the German Foreign Ministry. Thank you for that. But also, and this is for us very important, many private donors from the taz Panter Foundation make it possible that we can have this workshop. And we have as well, advisory support from the NGOs I mentioned already, which is El Balaman, Al-Sharq and Haukari. These are NGOs who are working in Iraq a long time, and they help us with a lot of advices. So the next milestones we have in front of us, that will be, we will produce 4 extra pages in June. They will be published in taz. And in June, probably, the group will meet in Baghdad. The German embassy invited the group. Let's see what will happen. And then the workshop will end in November, hopefully with a visit of the whole group in Berlin, where we want to show the German capital, its political institutions, civil institutions. There will be media exchange, so the group will get to know a lot of journalists here, and as well we will have fun, but also we will produce another 4 extra pages. So far at the moment, we do not know, because of Corona, if this visit can happen. If it won't happen, then we will have an international conference, I guess. Yes, that's our project. And now I hand over to Sven.
Thank you, Petra. So let's get started to get to know the 4 journalists who attend this meeting tonight. I would like to start with Khulud, because as Petra already said, as our editor, she's somehow the heart of our project and, let's say, the most important person who's making this project possible or happen. Khulud, we know each other for quite a while from other projects as well. And you once told me that in Iraq, as a woman, you have to choose between journalism or getting married. And you choose journalism. Why? Khulud, we don't hear you. Khulud, you have to switch on the mic, please. Yes, no.
أنا من لما كنت طالبة بنهاية المرحلة الابتدائية.
When I was a student at the end of the elementary school, my father asked me. I grew up in a village in Karbala, and I was afraid that they will not let me finish my studies because it was hard for girls to continue their education, and they were not letting her. So my father asked me, if you finish your education, what do you want to reach? What do you want to become? And so Ms. Khalid said, I want to become a journalist. And he said, journalism is a hard profession, and usually men do this profession. So it's hard for me to imagine you working as a journalist. I said, let's try and we will see. So I was in high school before university, and I was a very good student. I was the top of my class more than once. So during the last year of high school, I was the top of the literature department in the school in which I was studying. But unfortunately, my father passed away. So this was very hard for me because he promised me that he will help me choose the university. So I did not go abroad, and I studied in Baghdad, and I studied media. I felt that I'm not only trying to reach my objective or my dream or living my dream, but also implementing my duty towards my father, because if he remained alive and he gave me the option to choose the university, he was going to allow me to study media. So I consider myself a lucky woman, because not everyone is working in a profession that they love. But I am actually working in a profession that I love since my childhood.
So, and nowadays you are the editor-in-chief of an online magazine in Iraq called Al-Manassa. How many other female editors-in-chief do you know in Iraq?
يعني أنا بمحررات للأسف ما أعرف بس أنا أعرف
I don't actually know editors in chief, but I know that there are two editors called Naveen Mufti, Nibras al-Ma'mouri, and also me. We work in the Journalist Syndicate, and all three of us are editors-in-chief. But as far as editors, I know one in Somalia and one in Rashid. I don't really know a lot of editors. Because editors usually have to work in the evening, and this profession is usually given to men. So I don't have information about the number of editors, but I'm sure that it's a very low number.
I think
just like the number of editors-in-chief.
Yeah. I think the correct number is it's 3 female editors-in-chief in 2,000 media outlets in Iraq. I think that's the correct number. So why is it so difficult for female journalists to get a leading position in Iraq?
يعني هي عدة أسباب منها مثلا.
It's for many reasons. One of them being most of the people that are managing these media institutions are males. So when a person that is leading this institution is a male, they have this mindset that if I bring a woman to put her in a good position, maybe she will not be able to manage this position as much as a man. And this is a stereotype that is common in their mindset, even before trying to work with women. And there are men that give opportunities to women to have certain positions in TV channels or online magazines, but the majority do not allow women to have these positions. I once asked one of the colleagues, and he said, if I bring a woman and have her in the night shift as an editor, her husband might not accept. And because she has responsibilities in the home, and usually women in the Middle East are responsible for children and for home duties, so they will have a double amount of work. So I can't have a woman be in a leading position when she has other burdens, and maybe her husband will not allow her to implement her duties appropriately. But other people or other males might have a discriminating mindset against women, and they might think that women cannot achieve as many objectives as men. And another thing is that the number of female journalists in Iraq is actually less than the number of male journalists in Iraq. Another point is related to women empowerment. we have many women, but many women need further training, further follow-up, so they can be in these leading positions. They can be journalists, they can be broadcasters, but it's difficult for them to become an editor-in-chief suddenly, because I, as Khulud, studied in the College of Media, and I started as a student journalist, and I started following the news and writing different reports. And for 5 and 6 years, I was a news broadcaster, and then an editor for internal magazines after 10 years of experience. And after 5 years of experience as an editor, I became an editor-in-chief. So there's a series of or chain of experiences that we need to live as men or women. We need to have this experience until we reach this position of an editor or an editor-in-chief. And women usually remain journalists because they do not allow her, they either do not allow her to have a higher position, or the woman herself feels that if she takes on this position of editor-in-chief, she will have more burdens. And she already has many burdens from her society and from her home and from her work. So these are part of the reasons. The main reason is the male dominant mentality that thinks that women should not have leading positions. And there's an idea in the heads of males that manage these institutions. They think that men can do a better job than women in certain professions. In other professions, they prefer a woman to have this position. For example, I spoke to many women that work in tourism offices, and these tourism offices prefer to have women working for them. And they say we prefer to have a woman in these agencies because women come and finish their work and stay on the laptop, and they are very hardworking. But if I have a guy in this position, then they go for a smoke break, they go for a phone call, and they waste a lot of time. So they prefer to hire women in these offices. But in the media profession, there's this mindset that men can do a better job than women, so they don't give her these leading positions that have more responsibilities.
And do you have an idea how one can change this mindset?
يعني أنا اللي لاحظته إنه لسنوات طويلة منظمات المجتمع المدني اللي اشتغلت بالعراق.
I noticed for many years that civil society organizations that were working in Iraq have worked on training male and female journalists and tried to work on awareness raising and how institutions can have a methodology and can have certain contracts. And they most of them focus on training journalists and not training the managers. Because I, Khulud, I'm an editor-in-chief in a magazine. So if you train 10 or 15 journalists in my media institution, the institution itself will not change if you don't train me personally. I should be trained on how to change my mentality and how to give an equal space to men and women to prove themselves. In my institution, for example, I give space for males and females, and whoever proves him or herself, then they will stay with me. I usually help the females, and because I know that most female journalists are living in very conservative societies, and this society is trying to isolate her, so I help her to progress. So when you train these institutions, you need to focus on training the heads of these institutions that are leading these institutions, and not only focus on training the journalists, because the journalists will go back to the institutions and they will work according to the mindset, the direction of the institution. So we need to work on changing the methodology, not only of the journalists, but also of the heads of the journalists, and to try to change their mindsets and the patterns of thinking that they have.
Thank you very much, Khulud. For sure, we will talk about this later. I think there will be a lot of questions and discussions about these topics. And now Petra is going to introduce Rangin.
Yeah, hello again. And Rangin, to be honest, I'm not sure whether we really met in 2019. Personally, my remembrance is we were sitting there in your small studio. It was only one room, and there were few girls doing the job. And yeah, what does it mean, really? You started in 2005 as a community radio from refugees were working for refugees. What does it mean? What are, if you look at your radio today, what are the main topics in your program, and how long is your daily program? If you just could describe a bit, what are you doing at, your station is called New Voice, if we translate it from Kurdish.
Thank you for all the attendees, audience who are listening, who are viewing. The New Voice is an independent community radio in Halabja Governorate, which is newly recognized as governor for the territory of Sharazur and Hawraman. It was established in 2005. In Kurdistan region, we have only 2 community radios. I think in whole Iraq, we don't have such model, but we have New Voice and another radio station which is working. In our New Voice radio station, we in the beginning interested in raising awareness of youth and women. Personally speaking, since 2006, I am engaged in working in this radio station. We have legal awareness, health awareness, economic awareness for females, how to make them independent financially, to rely upon themselves. In 2015, after the conflict escalated in Syria and people were displaced, as you mentioned, we are in the Iranian border. We are the furthest city in the Kurdistan region. We are close to Iran, but many people from Syrian refugees and huge influx after Daesh invasion from Iraq inside, they fled to Kurdistan region. These people who were heading to Halabja were suffering from unemployment because as Halabja citizens, we have witnessed, experienced refugees, displacement, as you know, after 1988, of the chemical bombardment, after 1991, we were always displaced, migrated. Yes, we were supported by Iran, but when people came to our governorate, they were feeling like refugees, like displaced. So to overcome this sense or this feeling, we suggested in the New Voice radio station to have a training course for the Syrian and Iraqi journalists who resided in Halabja after displacement. And we know women, when they are going to one city to another city, they will be staying at home because of culture, of norms, because of not being exposed to the city. But the idea was to have a cultural integration, to make them acquainted with the city. So we had initial primary training courses for journalists and working inside the radio. in 2015, we actually had many Iraqi and Syrian females participated. We opened a new department for them, a new opportunity for them to talk about their sufferings, their problems. If I don't feel their pain, but they can convey their pain, they can address their pain and their suffering through our radio. So we extended our coverage so as to reach to the Suleimaniya surrounding camps. So we made sure that our female trained correspondent to go to the camps, to interview, to talk to the female residents inside the tents and the camps, to talk about their daily lives. And we realized that the administration of the city and the public in general, they were very sympathetic to the citizen refugees and displaced. It was a good achievement for them. So we had 9 hours of programming from the morning to the evening. 4 hours were actually focused for refugees. So they were talking about themselves by their voices. So they were selecting the topics, what is suitable for their communities. So we covered them and we broadcasted these programs on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you, Rangin. Just only to add, as I know, you still have about, I think, something with the tone, Rami. As I know, you still have 3 camps around Halabja with about 20,000 refugees, right? I think something like that. So as we understand now, you are not a regular radio like we know it in the West or in other countries, but it is some sort a mixture of really activism and journalism, something like that. So when we talk about journalism in Kurdistan, because when we started the workshop, the group said, well, Iraq is so different. The journalists in Kurdistan, they have more freedoms, then they enjoy more freedoms than, for example, the journalists in the south in very conservative regions. But my question is now, what is the biggest problem for especially female journalists in Kurdistan, in Iraqi Kurdistan? Can you describe, as I remember, for example, there was in February, 5 journalists have been detained.
Yes, it is obvious the problem for journalists in Kurdistan region. Yes, it's true. In the beginning, in the southern or the middle, they think that we have a better or relative freedom, but we have similar problem in Kurdistan region. Yes, it is true in Kurdistan region. Maybe we have the legal frameworks, we have the laws, but they are not implemented. Laws are written on papers only. Practically speaking, we are not able to benefit from them. Even if a journalist making a mistake, they are not indicted by journalism laws. They will take it back to the civil status laws so as to be punished severely. Unfortunately, this case is dominant. Kurdistan region, like Iraq, as Ms. Khulud mentioned, that only 3 female editor-in-chief are present in Iraq, but come to Kurdistan region, out of all these media outlets, how many managers are females? Ms. Leila, actually, our colleague, prepared a topic for this project about how many outlets are gender sensitive in their approach, in their program. After reading that report, I can say proudly that the New Voice Radio, we have this protocol written, and we are advancing women presence, but it is not very easy to work on the region. If you send a female journalist to the practical field, they are faced with the problems. It is not very different. We have the same problems, obstacles, but we can say we can manage ourselves to sustain ourselves in a better way. As you know, as you mentioned, in Badinan territory, 5 activists and journalists were sentenced to 6 years of prison. Unfortunately, their case has been changed. I can say that, unfortunately, journalists are not very free to express themselves. We are most of the time talking about that female presence in the media outlet. We think if they are given the chance to hold leading positions, they will give more opportunities to female journalists because, as you mentioned, the patriarchal, the masculine mentality, it is a huge obstacles for us to actualize our potentials, our capabilities. And as you know, we mentioned about the indictment, we can say the case has been terribly changed, manipulated, and their situation is not very good, and maybe there is a second trial for them. This is the reality of freedom of speech, and the problem of female journalists are no less terrible than their situation. I have been working for 17 years in journalism. I decided to sustain, but people think that I am not faced with problem, but I am overcoming, and I am paving the way for other colleagues, for my fellow members in the New Voice radio station, so as to come forward and to show themselves and to prove themselves actually in this field.
Okay, Rangi, thank you. And maybe my last question is, you know, in Germany, Iraq is really, well, I would say if it is a topic, then it's about bombing. It's about ISIS or Daesh. But last weekend, we had another topic, and Iraq was in the German news in every news show, they reported about the visit of Pope Francis in Iraq. And my question is, did you report on this visit? Because he was in Erbil, he was in Mosul. And if you did not report, what is your personal assessment? Could it help could this visit help and bring forward the dialogue between the different religions in Iraq?
Apparently, this past weekend, all the media channels, all the Iraqi channels, with the preparation for the visits, for the Holy Pope, they were very engaged, very busy. But frankly speaking, because our radio is a community radio, we had only news, because we thought if Papa would visit Halabja, it would have been a hot topic for us. But because he was just visiting the capital, Erbil, and maybe the radio community, since they are working for the community, but what was important for us was rainfall, and the 8th of March, International Women's Day, not to go far from the topic, the Papa's visit is significant in itself, because we have different point of views. Some people were saying the Pope's visit is just like a scenario. He is just visiting to he was actually governmentally invited. It was in support of the government and the political parties, but some other idea which is my personal idea and thinking. I think in general, the Papa's visit for Kurdistan and Iraq, we know that Iraq and Kurdistan, it is diverse community. We have diversity, religious communities, different religious communities. From this point of view, I think it is beneficial for reconciliation, for bringing peace, for bringing them close to each other, even if just for 1 week, these people were gathering together, especially in Ur. We have seen all the representatives of all religions. They were present, they addressed the audience, although it was a short time, but we have witnessed different speeches by different representatives of the religious. I think personally it was for strengthening the coexistence between, which is very obvious in Kurdistan region. I can say from this point of view, it was a good step, strong step to show that in Iraq and in Kurdistan region, even for the people who were not aware about this diversity in Kurdistan, actually we had seen the preparation in Kurdistan region similarly to what happened to in Iraq. Because I am religiously, I am from the Kakai sect. I think it was a message of peace. I think it can be regarded as a step for bringing the religious followers together and to mitigate and to reduce violence and bringing an end of the Christians going out, fleeing the country, because Christians like Kakais, like Yazidis, and all the other components, ethnic components, religious components, they should stay in Kurdistan and in the country. Maybe it's a significant message from this aspect to them.
Okay, thank you very much, Frangin. And now I hand over again to Sven.
Okay, thanks a lot, Rangin. Coming from the Pope, which was, of course, one of the big topics worldwide over the weekend, to another topic, which is, of course, worldwide discussed, which is unfortunately the corona pandemic. We already talked a lot during our workshop about it. And I would like to ask Mana from Divania, because Mana reported a lot about corona in Iraq, and she, as far as I know, I think I can tell this here in this round, Mana also has been affected by corona quite early at the beginning or in the middle of last year. So Mana, how is the situation, the corona situation in Iraq at the moment?
مرحبا جميعا، إن شاء الله تكونون بخير وكل عام وكل النساء بألف ألف خير. صوت واضح عفوا؟
Is
my voice clear?
It is very clear, the sound from my side.
ضعيف منار.
الإنترنت مرات يضعف ويرجع، ما أعرف هسه يمكن أعتقد الصوت صار تمام.
Sorry, we
Can
don't
you hear me well?
Yes, now we hear you, Harem, yes.
بس تحدثي ببطء حتى.
تمام، شنو كان السؤال عفوا على كوفيد وأنه إصابتي، بس أكو سؤال محدد له عن تجربتي ويا كوفيد. وضع كورونا حاليا هي
The situation of the corona pandemic is that we are facing the crisis once again, but people generally are not taking all the necessary precautions to not be infected, even though we have higher rates of infection in certain areas, including Diwania, but because of the lack of trust from people towards the government, anything that the government publishes, people do not trust, so whether it's the numbers or the precautions, instructions, and they think that even the lockdowns are political lockdowns and not health lockdowns. And the government has imposed fines on people that do not follow the necessary precautions, and this is an extra burden on citizens. But despite these fines, people are still not committing. And also, the lack of health services that are provided in governmental institutions or hospitals is also another cause, because most patients that are able financially obtain health services at home. And this is dangerous, because this means that we will have medical waste in residential neighborhoods and in unsafe places, and many people actually have the profession or live on searching through garbage for anything valuable. So this means that it will affect their health as well. So this was a summary about the current situation now in Iraq.
And as far as I know, at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of female journalists get infected by corona. Why was this so?
طبعا بسبب العمل أنا يعني
This was because of their line of work. I'm not a field journalist, but my husband also works in the field of journalism, and he was infected, and then he transferred the infection to me. My infection was very dangerous because Ms. Khulud was aware of my situation, my conditions at that time, but my symptoms were very severe. So journalists can be infected like any other person. This could be because of their field work or because of them covering stories stories related to corona in the hospitals or in public places. And it could be an infection from another person, like my case. I work with media institutions as a freelancer. So if I work on a piece of news, then I get paid. If I don't, then I don't get paid. So this means that I was affected even financially because I could not work during my infection. There were certain grants provided to journalists, but the procedures of obtaining these grants were very difficult, and maybe these journalists needed financial and health assistance, but they could not obtain it at the time. Journalists in general are facing many issues when it comes to their rates and their financial abilities. So when they get infected, they're not able to work, and this affects them further. And it affected them actually when it comes to their income.
As mentioned before, you're running your own website or online magazine, which is called Mana News. And just recently, you won an award. Of course, as far as I know, you have won lots of awards with your page, but the last one was given you by the Dutch government for your reports about human rights issues. So how do these awards or these international recognitions help you in your work?
المنار نيوز هو موقع صحفي.
Manar News is a journalistic website, and it's because my name is Manar, and it's not related to any other entity that is called Manar. We established it in 2014, and the objective was to break the barrier of male dominance in decision-making positions and media institutions. As Ms. Khulud mentioned, there are very few women in decision-making positions in media institutions. So in 2014, me and my colleagues established this website with the help of certain colleagues, but all of the administrative positions in this institution was given to female journalists. So I was the editor editor-in-chief, and my deputy was also a woman, and also the secretary was a woman, and the head of the journalist was also a woman. This was in order to encourage other women and to prove to them that women are able to run these decision-making positions inside these institutions. In 2017, our project was chosen as an upcoming.
Okay, آسفة جدا.
I just asked them to slow down a little bit. So Manar News was adopted by the Journalist Syndicate as a registered journalistic institution, and in 2017 it was chosen as one of the media projects, up-and-coming media projects by the International Journalist Network. So we decided to turn this website or transform this website from a news website to a general website that supports journalists that are working in independent institutions, and to have a free and unrestricted space for female journalists, and to focus on the causes of Iraqi women, which are important and sensitive topics. And we were able to cover news related to women movements and also human rights violations and women rights violations. And we also had advocacy campaigns for women issues, and also we're trying to give space to females that are not journalists and they have other experiences and they want to convey these experiences to the public. So we have a department in our website called From the Streets are From Reality, and also we have a part in our website, and we provide free advertisements for any women that have any projects that they want to advertise. And we also have a part in our website dedicated for job opportunities, for film production, for participating in workshops. So we were able to cover all of these topics. We had two objectives, one of them being supporting female journalists and also providing opportunity for writing in our website, and also to preserve their rights because we are registered with the Iraqi Journalist Syndicate. And also the second objective was to have an inclusive covering of women issues in Iraq, and we are the first website that specializes in covering women issues in Iraq. Important organizations such as the Iraqi Women's Network and other organizations started depending on the reports that we publish in our website as a source, such as shadow reports and certain studies that we publish. So they were communicating with us to obtain information. Working in Manar News is voluntarily based, and this was one of the most prominent challenges that we were facing and we are still facing, because independent journalism is suffering from the lack of support, and most institutions are supported by either international organizations or political entities or political parties, but we are an independent website and we have not obtained any financial support so far, except certain cooperations that we had with local organizations and also the Network of International Journalists. So it chose Manar News as the third. We obtained the third position as successful projects in the Arab world, and we also opened an electronic TV station, and we want to open a radio station, and to also provide a free space and convey the voices of women in all different media forms, written, verbal, and visual. So we also communicate with embassies and international organizations, but unfortunately there were certain promises given, but maybe personal relationships impact these promises not being delivered, or we have certain gaps with communication with these entities personally. Because our work is voluntary, we cannot force our male and female journalists to continue working with us and produce materials, because they can publish the same material in other websites and they can have financial gains from that. Yes, we obtained this award, which is having the third place, and also an appreciation award from the Iraqi parliament, and also from the Iraqi Journalist Syndicate, and a Martyr Atwar Bahjat Award from the Iraqi Media Forum. So we have other awards as well. But regarding the Tulip Award from the Dutch government, I was chosen based on my efforts working in women's rights and covering the issues of women's rights, and working also in civil society, because I work with civil society organizations as a trainer. And I launched certain campaigns
كان من أسباب الاختيار هو اللي
in this regard. Another aspect or another reason for me being chosen was because I was working with minorities as well. Not because I'm a member of the advisory committee of the Iraqi Alliance of Minorities, but I launched a campaign called, I'm sorry for the word, but this is the common word. The name of the campaign was Gypsies Are Human as well. So this was a voluntary campaign and is still ongoing. This campaign is important because it was launched by a woman. And we in Diwania, we are living in a conservative tribal society, so it's very difficult to work with this category, because people look at this community in an inferior manner, and we have actually planned very well for the challenges that we might face and to see how we can address them. And there was also family support, and my husband was one of the big supporters for my work. And this is also very important for women that are working in the media field. Yes, I had the willingness and the capacities, and I always try to teach myself additional skills. And I think that people can develop their capacities and should not wait all the time for other people to help them. I faced a lot of pressure, so I was thinking about quitting my work in the media fields, but my husband started supporting me, and it was difficult at the time for me to travel from one province to the other, and Ms. Khulud knows that I was being deprived from participating in certain workshops because of the traditions and norms in our society. But my father and mother and my husband were my biggest supporters, and my husband started encouraging me and supported me to travel. So I went by myself to Europe, to France, to Arab countries by myself. The path was very difficult, but there are supporting factors or people that help us succeed in life. So this was briefly my experience in journalism. Because this is the International Women's Day, I would like to thank Ms. Khulud Al-Amri, because she has a big impact in my life, and we learned a lot from her charisma and from her professionalism, especially when it comes to writing journalistic features, because I obtained an award from Professional Journalism Conference because of a story that I wrote. I wrote a story about a child that went on a journey to obtain a treatment from France. I also consider this an achievement, because I firmly believe that journalism and humanitarian work are intertwined, and maybe this is the reason that led me to launch this campaign to support this the community of travelers, or as they are called, gypsies in the local community. So there are certain images that stayed with me in my memory. These were images or scenes that I saw in their villages. So I decided to launch this campaign and work with them. And I was able to achieve many objectives with my personal efforts and also with the help of volunteers. If you have any other questions, I'm willing to answer you.
Yes, of course, we have a lot of questions, Mana. The first question is because you just mentioned your engagement for the gypsy community, and I know that you are also doing, besides the journalistic work, a lot of social work, and also all the projects within your website you just described, they have somehow a social impact. So how would you describe yourself? Are you more an activist, or are you more a journalist, or are you both?
I cannot describe myself, but if I think that there's a strange link between my work in journalism and my work in the humanitarian or civil campaigns. For example, when I work on a journalistic report, I try to dive deep into the aspects of my work and to know the sufferings of the people, because I know that I have the capacity and willingness to help these people. I am able to also work on aid campaigns. Sometimes I work on certain reports that are related to women issues, and I work on the issue as a journalistic report, and I also have a page on Facebook which is very active. It's a social page called Tea and Bread, or Chai Khubuz, and I also publish these humanitarian aspects on this page. So I think there is a great link between humanitarian and journalistic work, and I think that journalism is a very important tool to provide humanitarian services. We also worked on a detailed report that was published on Jazeera.net on women that were the victim of violence and they do not have safe shelters. The government does not allow for shelters to be open for female survivors. So after I obtained very accurate information from women that were in certain governmental centers, there was a group suicide in one of these governmental centers. They are not shelters, they are governmental centers. So there was a mass or group suicide by a group of girls in one of these governmental centers. And I conveyed this to the Human Rights Commission, and the guards of these centers were changed, and maybe these reports did not have a big impact with the government. I also worked on the law dealing with survivors that are minors. So I did not only write a report about this issue, but I was following up any governmental procedures on this issue. So,
okay. Mana,
I worked on many issues. I covered the journalistic and humanitarian aspect of many issues. Go ahead.
Go. Thanks a lot, Mana. I would like now to raise some questions to Hiba, because we already have the first questions in the chat. So let's give also Hiba a short chance. For sure, we'll come back to you. So warm welcome, Hiba. Hope you're doing well. Hiba, you're living in Kerbala. So, and for those of you who don't know it, Karbala is quite a conservative city in Iraq. And in one of the articles which you wrote for our project, Her Turn, you mentioned that sometimes men do not want to talk to female journalists. So how do you deal with it when you go on the street and if you want to conduct an interview and men do not want to talk to you? What do you do?
مساء الخير على الجميع وأنا سعيدة بهاي المنصة.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be part of this great platform that has added a lot to my knowledge and skills, and I'm very happy also to be speaking to you today. I am Hiba Majid. I work as a journalist. As everyone knows, that Karbala is a province that has certain norms and traditions, and there are also certain extreme families or radical families that think that this is a profession that women should not work in. And other people think that this is a very difficult profession and women should not work in this profession. So I started working in the media field in 2012, and I faced many difficulties. In 2012, I will not hide from you this fact that I was lacking a lot of skills at that time. I worked on many issues related to women and children and politics and security. In 2013, I faced an issue that I still remember to this day. There was a religious leader. I wanted to take his opinion about a certain topic, and I had the Iraqi abaya on, and I did not have makeup on, and I applied all of the conditions through which I will be accepted by this religious leader, and so I can do my work. But he refused to have a meeting with me, and he asked me to have my colleague, who was the cameraman, to hold the microphone, and I should ask him from far away. And at the time, there was no other speaker but him to take his opinion. So I agreed, and I had my colleague, the cameraman, hold the microphone so I can take a statement. But later, I regretted this decision because I could have not conducted this interview. He should have respected me, and he should have respected the fact that I am a woman and I am a journalist and I am here to do official business. So since 2012 until 2021, I have gained a lot of experience, and I have a lot more strength to face these issues and challenges that I was facing and I'm still facing. So I have many reports that I publish on my page, and I am interviewed by many news channels on the streets, and I have faced a lot of harassments from the streets, from people, from bikers. And when I work with the news report, I try to only focus on my work and to I try to tolerate all of these comments. And I also try to calm my photographer down, because even my photographer, or my cameraman, sometimes gets agitated and gets angry from these comments. So I started calming him down recently, and I am telling him that constantly that we are dealing with a society in which there are people that accept female journalists and people that don't. So we often go to public places and try to take statements from certain people. So I go to certain men, and their wives do not accept that their husband should have an interview with me. Maybe the husband often feels that they want to make the statement or to interview, but their wives do not allow them. Ms. Minar says, "You are beautiful, Hiba." That's why they are jealous, their wives. That's why they don't allow you to interview their husbands. So yes, unfortunately, I have many obstacles, or I face many obstacles, but this actually motivated me to continue my work. And these obstacles actually encouraged me to continue working in this field. And I now have strength and courage that I did not have before. In 2012, for example, I was attending certain conferences, and I was 22 at the time, and I was shy to ask questions. For example, there were conferences in which there were ministers and the governors. So I was afraid to ask questions at the time, and my question might not be appropriate. But with years passing and me gaining experience, I am actually sitting now in the conferences in the first row, and I am the first of the people that ask questions. And I also receive questions. I'm willing to receive questions, being one of the first people that receive questions or try to answer questions. So I think that the role of women is not inferior to the role of women, to the role of men when it comes to working in journalism. Certain norms and traditions, for example, prevent women to go into certain tribal diwans or guest houses or guest places. And we are invited sometimes to these tribal sittings. So I have to send the cameraman and send the questions with the cameraman so they can ask the guests of these in these tribal sittings. And sometimes the operations command of the province does tours inside the city, and they tell me that we will be doing this tour and we would like to have it covered by your media institution. So they tell me that I should send my cameraman and not go myself to cover their tour. And they make me feel that I will be a burden on them. And I told them that this is my work and you should start allowing me to come on these tours with them. Why do you make me feel that I'm a burden? Both men and women are trying to convey the voices of citizens and work on their issues. So there are people that undermine the value of women and their work. I actually had a dream to be a war journalist. And in order to prove that women can work in all of the fields and to convey the news. And I tried to cover the ISIS, the liberation of cities occupied by ISIS, but I was prevented to work as a war journalist covering these operations. And there were colleagues that I was trying to convince to take me with them, but all of them refused, and they said, you will be a burden on us and you cannot walk with us in the same pace and you cannot be as fast as us. So I was always telling them that, why do you make me feel that I'm a burden? Women are not a burden. And we are still facing these traditions and norms and that tell us that women should not work in any field, and there are special fields in which women should work according to the traditions and norms. But I will not compromise, and I will continue working on my ambitions and my objectives.
Thank you very much, Hiba. And I would like now to open the floor for questions from the audience. And we already got the first question, which is somehow a little bit related to what you've just said, but not in the physical world. It's more related to the digital world. So, Hiba, how do you assess the security situation for female journalists and active women who are or who post on Facebook or Instagram? So we know there is a lot of hate speech going on, especially in the social media. So the question is, how do you assess the security situation for these women?
بصراحة سؤال جدا مهم.
It's a very important question. Many journalists were threatened, and many activists as well. I am, before becoming a journalist, I was an activist, and I'm still an activist and a journalist. There was an activist in Basra that was murdered during the October protests. Many women were abducted, and many women were threatened, and their rights were violated. I was maybe the only journalist in Karbala that was staying until late hours of the night to film from my mobile, film the protests. So I was afraid that I might be kidnapped by unknown entities. So when I was going back home, they were sending me messages, and they were telling me that certain protesters do not accept you being there, and because you do not support us. And certain people from the security forces were sending me messages and telling me that you do not support us and you are supporting the protesters. So we were targeted by both entities. So when I was communicating with the Karbala Operations Command, and when I told them I was facing threats, they were telling me, what do you want? Do you want me to send you bodyguards? Do you want me to be with you all the time? And they were telling me that you don't have to go into these conflicts and face these threats. So many journalists were facing threats. And I was one of the people that actually was targeted on Facebook, and there was a lot of hate speech about me on Facebook, and I was contacted, and they told me that there was a Facebook page that was speaking about you, and they were saying that we should not allow this journalist to come back to the protests, and or we will attack her. And they actually attacked me twice or three times, and my colleagues actually supported me, and they were able to save me from certain entities that were trying to attack me. So many women were threatened, and there are certain women that only publish on social media platforms, and there are other journalists and activists. We are four female field journalists in Karbala, and all four of us have been threatened, and we were expelled from the protests multiple times. So certain protesters and certain security forces also were not accepting our presence there. So we are the victim here.
Thank you very much, Hiba.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Maybe we have some more questions from the chat. Maybe one question, Khulud, for you. What kind of international support would be a real benefit for female journalists from and in Iraq? Would you like to answer, Khulud? No?
Your mic, Khulud?
ممكن تعيد لي السؤال لأن النت فصل عندي.
Can you repeat?
To repeat the question is, what kind of international support would be a real benefit for female journalists from and in Iraq?
I think Ms. Khulud is having some internet issues.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, she's muted.
Maybe rank on now.
I think she's back. Let's see. She says, I'm sorry, but my internet keeps disconnecting.
Okay.
Okay, maybe Rangin wants to answer.
مهم جدا أن يتم دعم الصحفيات أولا في مجال
It's very
السلامة.
important to support journalists, first of all, in occupational safety, because we have many journalists that have issues with preserving their safety, so they need support in this manner. They need workshops on occupational safety, physical safety, digital safety. It's very important to build the capacities of journalists so they can be able to protect themselves and preserve their lives and prevent others from blackmailing them because their information can be hacked or can be available online. Another important issue, it is very important to have cooperation with the institutions in which these journalists work, so they can build the capacities of the journalists that work with them, so they can contribute also in helping their colleagues. The more we have journalists that are trained on how to protect themselves, they can also help their colleagues and give them trainings on how to protect themselves. This is very important. Another topic is cooperation with media institutions when it comes to supporting journalism. So the more cooperation that exists with these media institutions, the more support will be given to the journalists, because it's difficult to convince these media institutions to provide personal safety equipment to these to their journalists. We have been living with the COVID-19 pandemic, and there are institutions that have not provided the basic necessities for their journalists. For example, hand sanitizers, gloves, masks. These are very basic things that journalists should be wearing when they are doing their work. There should be mutual cooperation with the journalists themselves and also the institutions in which these journalists work. And we should focus on multiple aspects of cooperation, but we should focus mainly on physical, psychological, and digital safety, because there's no focus on psychological safety for female journalists, especially journalists that were covering the ISIS liberation operations, and journalists that witnessed protesters being murdered in front of them. So these journalists need psychological support because they saw things that they were not supposed to see.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Khulud. So maybe I have another question which came up now about censorship and self-censorship. All of you reported about threats, victims, but of course, what Mana, for example, told Rangin and Hiba, you are as well, or you told us as well, success stories. But we know that there are lots of threats against female journalists, especially. So where are the red lines in your reporting? When do you have to stop reporting, or you think about stopping the reports? So what does it make to you to know that that you live in a tribal conservative society, maybe in Kurdistan or central or southern Iraq? So what about censorship? Censorship and self-censorship. As we call it in Germany, we have a phrase that some journalists, we know this problem also, it's on a quite different level in Germany and Europe, but that you have the scissors in your mind already. Is it a phenomenon which you recognized as well? So who wants to answer?
Mana's raising her hand.
Who? Oh, Mana. Mana is raising her hand. Yeah, Mana, please.
هذا سؤال مهم جدا كون احنا صحفيات نعمل
This is a very important question because we are journalists that are working in the field, and because of the nature of our societies, we face threats, whether they are simple or dangerous threats. We are aware of our surroundings, and we should not be surprised by anything, and we should always expect that we might be targeted. And we should be aware of necessary measures for personal or occupational safety, as Ms. Khulud mentioned. Every journalist in Iraq should be aware of this, because considering that we are working in an unstable environment, especially during times of crisis, whether it was ISIS or protests, even during normal protests, journalists should be aware of all necessary measurements or measures for occupational safety. There is something that we call early warning and indicators. For example, regarding the protests that happened in Diwania, I was there and I was coordinating with certain colleagues that were journalists and also that were activists and protesters. I wanted to take a few shots of women participation in the protests, and a young man came to me and told me that you should retreat because there's some violence happening between the protesters and the police. So I calmly retreated from the scene of the protest. So if I was not prepared before and I did not have contact with these activists and journalists, I would not have been able to leave the protests, and I was going to face danger. There's a certain level through which we can, a certain level of danger through which we can decide whether to stay there or leave. I saw that there were certain violations against some of my colleagues. So after I witnessed these violations, I did not continue to go to witness the protests. I was covering the protests from the fields. I stopped covering the field protests and I started covering the protests from my website. So a very important topic related to occupational safety is that whether we as journalists participate in the protest as journalists or civil society, it's very important to be aware of our occupational safety and to know which paths we should take or which roads we should take and which places we should be in. So, because, for example, in certain times the situation might not be stable, I should not take the same road back as I took going to the protest. So, and we should conduct our interviews in safe places. And also, when we meet activists, whether they are men or women, we should not meet them in places that might be dangerous for us or for them. So being aware of these occupational safety measures is very important. And I think their internet is disconnected.
Okay. Sven?
Or is it my internet? Can you hear me?
No.
Yeah,
Mana, I'm very sorry we don't hear you at the moment. So there seems to be a connection problem. Maybe we come back to this later. We just got the next question from the chat, which is very interesting. It's about the economic circumstances of your work. And the question is your work paid for, and how, by whom, and can you make a living as a journalist?
I was disconnected, Sven. Can you repeat the question, please? Sven, can you hear me?
We have two more questions. No, yes. Sorry?
Okay, I was disconnected. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. It's a question to all of you. The question is, how do you earn money with journalism? How difficult is it to make a living of journalism? And a short answer, please.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe Rangin?
Rangin.
Yes.
And Hiba.
It is an important question. Certainly, journalism in Iraq, as has been called, as it is an exhausting profession, it is not a rewarding profession. You cannot stand alone with journalism. As you know, we had a research last year. I think it was before the corona. There was a research about the media institutions, the budget spent on men are more than, by half, more than the budget given to women, while we are doing the same work. So I can say personally, I have two works. I have a governmental job and a private job, because journalism will not be able to make me afford my living. The budget, the income is not supportive. But our persistence, our sustainability is an obvious indication that we are not quitting. We are hoping that journalism will change, but personally, I don't believe that journalism, I'm talking about independent media, but the media supported by parties, by political parties, they have better budgets, they can sustain themselves, but for the independent, the civil institutions, they cannot in any way to sustain themselves by the media work they are doing.
Thank you very much, Rangin. And now maybe the last question to all of you, maybe each of you give a short statement to that, is a question from Africa, where the taz Panter Foundation will soon start a quite similar project. And the question from Nigeria, I think, is when will there be a female president in Iraq? First, Hiba, when will there be a female president in Iraq? In which year? Yeah, Rangin, in which year?
And Hulud.
For this, maybe in 3000, in year 3000. I'm very, very pessimistic about that.
Okay.
Mama, what is your take on that?
في العراق
Mana, what's your take on that?
هو أنه
We don't hear
تعيش
you.
موضوع لا تقدير.
In Iraq,
Actually, I can hear her.
you cannot anticipate or expect things, because everything in Iraq is unknown.
Everything in Iraq is not known.
Okay, Hiba?
Say the Hiba.
Hiba, your mic.
Days ago, yes, I can hear her. I can hear her, yes. A few days ago, there was a post that I wanted to publish in social media outlets. And the post was saying that if you want to achieve anything in Iraq, achieve it today and don't wait until tomorrow, because you never know what can happen tomorrow. So we cannot anticipate that they will have a female president, but we know that Iraqi women are very capable to take the lead in Iraq, and we have seen great women in many different institutions. So Iraqi women deserve to have this opportunity to become president, but we don't know when she will be given this opportunity.
Okay. And the last word to Hulud? Hulud, when will we have a female president in Iraq?
أنا أعتقد إنه عام 2050.
It seems.
I think that in 2050 we will have a president in Iraq.
Okay. Good.
I'm optimistic, and I'm sure that maybe in 2015 we will have a president in Iraq. Everything is changing. I'm sure that everything is in its way to change. Maybe it will take time, but it will change. A lot of things 20 years ago were very difficult to change in Iraq, but now it's part of the reality. So I'm optimistic that this reality will change, and in 2050 we will have a president of Iraq.
Okay.
Save this conversation until 2050, so we can see if Khulud was right. We will nominate Ms. Khulud to be the president.
Wow!
Good. This was the best closing word one can imagine. So from my side, thanks a lot for this very interesting talk. And the last words to Petra.
well, from my side as well, I'm really, Khulud, I will support your campaign for your presidential campaign, for sure. Yeah, for me, it's as well, it's only to say thank you to all of you. Thank you, Rami, for the technical support. Thank you, dear translators, interpreters. Please stay with us the next time, the next month. Thank you to the panelists and as well, yeah, of course, to the audience. And as I can see from the chat on YouTube, there are many, many thanks and many congratulations, especially for the journalists in Iraq. So this, I just would say, have a nice evening and thank you all, also those whom I did not mention. So, and the group we meet next Tuesday, always sharp in time.
Thank you.
That's
See
it.
you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
شكراً
Bye bye.
جزيلا.